I tell you, do you think Muslims all around the world are just the same?
No.
No? Are they copies of each other? Do they think the same way?
No.
Does Islam make them think the same thing? We're all just... Okay. It's good to know this. It's good to have examples. It's good to have examples of dress. Muslim women can be modestly dressed, right? With different fashions from their own. And men also. With different fashions from their own countries. And we see different art and architecture. And it's important to let people know that we are not one robot copying each other. That Islam is so wide and beautiful and merciful that it's let us all express ourselves differently. Yes?
Taj Mahal, is it a masjid or is it a masjid?
Yeah, you're right. They have made one area as a masjid, I think, but all of it, most of it, is just an example of architecture. It's like become a museum or a dedication to a man and when his wife died, a king. Now let's look at this. We're back at the Alhambra in an area called the Court of Lions. Do you see the lions around the fountain? There's 12 of them. There's 12, and so people say this might have been the first clock for 12 hands, right? 12 hours. Now somebody wrote this, let's read it. It is impossible to contemplate this scene so perfectly oriental. The abode of beauty is here as if it had been inhabited but yesterday. An American writer traveled to Spain in the 1800s and wrote this, and his name was Washington Irving. Has anybody heard of him? What did he write?
Rip Van Winkle.
Yes, Rip Van Winkle. Exactly. What else?
The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Exactly. Perfect. So he is a great American writer. He goes and he visits. He writes about this. A lot of Americans don't know this. So you are the ambassadors of this type of knowledge. If you're interested in it, you can let people learn about it. Through you, they will. Their own American writer wrote Tales of the Alhambra because he thought it was beautiful. He visited and he couldn't believe that it was in disrepair. The fountains weren't running anymore. The gardens were overgrown. Nobody had taken care of it since the Muslims were pushed out. When were the Muslims pushed out of Spain?
What was that date?
What was that famous year? The discovery of America also? 1492, right? Because they're connected, everybody. The founding of America by Columbus is connected with the Muslims in Spain. How? The same year that Ferdinand and Isabella, does that ring a bell, those two names?
Yeah.
Yes, who are they? The Christian king and queen who try to reconquer all of Spain from the Muslims in 1492. They take the keys of Alhambra from the last Muslim Spanish king, Abu Abdullah. They take the key from him. They drive the Muslims out. So the Alhambra is known for being Moorish architecture. I want you to know that word Moor because it's a derogatory, it's an insulting name, and I want you to go out and change it because it should be Muslim architecture. This is the greatest example of Muslim architecture, right? Moor means somebody of the lowlands, somebody who was pushed out, right? Not better, not as good. Remember the verse we talked about, that Muslims don't see people as being inferior, right? All the races have something to contribute. But what was done in Spain is they pushed them out and they called them low, people of the lowlands. We're up here in the high mountains. You're being pushed out of the country that was your home for 800 years. That happened in 1492. With the money that they took, Ferdinand and Isabella were able to do what? The money of this rich Muslim capital, Granada, they financed Columbus's voyages and they stocked his ships to set sail. And he discovered America. Do you see how Islamic history is linked with American history? Correct? Now this was the last great city of Islam in all of Spain. One by one there was a reconquest, they called it, of the Christians taking over Muslim lands. This was a part of the Nasrid dynasty. It was begun in the 1200s. And of course, when it was taken back by the Christians, when it was taken by the Christians in 1492, for 500 years nobody asked any questions about it. They left it to just rot. And then Napoleon was there. Napoleon Bonaparte was trying to conquer the world, remember? He was there and he also looted the Alhambra. And this was right before Washington Irving arrives. when he arrived in the 1820s, he wrote a book about it, and he loved it so much, and he wrote story after story of the Muslims and the Christians, how they lived in peace, and the amazing, and he would just sit there for hours drawing it and writing things like this. So he made the world wake up and take notice of this, and since his time, they've preserved it, and now people again can go visit it. Many people that I know of, like Imam Yusuf from our masjid, he's going there next week. A lot of people like Islamic City, the big Muslim organization, the website, they're going to visit it this year in the summer. So now it's available and running just like it was back in the day of the Muslims, thanks to Washington Irving. Now this is incredible. I want you to look at some similarities. This is the Great Mosque of Cordoba, Spain. The Umayyad family that Sister Ruba was talking about a little bit with An-Nasr, the Umayyad dynasty, because they started out in Damascus in Syria, and especially the very beginning of them, of the line, they wanted to replicate some things because they had a homesickness for Syria. They wanted the great mosque of Damascus to be replanted on European soil. And so they built this. Look how early they built this. What is the year? In the 9th century. 848 Common Era. I want you to notice the architecture. This is called the horseshoe. Okay? Look how beautiful. These are the same place. Vaulted. Look at the intricate work. No talking so everybody can hear, please. Look at the arches. Look at the colors. Now this is magnificent. I hope the color is coming across. This is one of the main entrances into the masjid. Look, this completed before 900. This is incredible. Now, are you ready?
Whoa.
Look at this. This is St. Peter's Basilica, Rome, Italy. This is one of the main attractions for Christians touring the world, touring Europe. This is a Christian cathedral and visiting site. What do you notice? It's the horseshoe design. And when? Which one was first? Ours, right. The Muslim architecture of the Great Mosque of Cordoba preceded it by 800 years. It took that long for Europe to be able to copy. Now look at these, look at the vaulted ceilings, look at these are called ribbed arches. They were known in Gothic architecture. Now look at this, look how many people visiting it. The Great Mosque of Cordoba was in Spain. It was the 3rd largest masjid in the world at that time. What does that tell you? That means Muslim Europeans were the 3rd largest, in just Cordoba, one city of Spain. There were a lot of Muslim cities of Spain, right? But just that one city had the 3rd largest amount of Muslims praying in it, in every prayer, in the world. All right. Okay, and this is how we have to discover what they took. What is interesting is we didn't just affect them in science or art. This is architecture that they took for their own religious building. That means they copied a Muslim religious building, and it affected what? Their very own religion. Right?
Why don't they put them
Now, what's interesting about this, look at the date. Around 1300, before there was a great explosion of the Renaissance, look at how people and Europeans were drawing. Very flat, right? Not lifelike. Now look at this. Leonardo da Vinci is in the area called the Mediterranean hub. All of the Mediterranean, which Europe surrounds, was Muslim at that time. Italy had a population. Muslims were in Italy and Sicily, and they were in Spain, and they were all over North Africa. That area was a Muslim Mediterranean. So this is why the Renaissance developed there in Italy. That's where it started. In fact, Muslims had such a strong presence in medicine right there on the coast of Italy that they made it have a different name. They created a term called Salernitian medicine because an area there called Salerno took all the Muslim anatomy. How does anatomy help you in making art, right? They end up being able, can you see? They end up being able to reproduce a more lifelike anatomy, right, in their artwork. So Leonardo da Vinci, in just one of his notebooks, he has 4 references to Ibn Sina.